Welcome to Part 1A of our ELA Spring Webinar Series for ELA Grade 6 through English 2. These recordings are based on the spring webinars we hosted in March 2025. The hosted webinars consisted of 2 sessions for grades 6 through English 2. To reduce the length of the recordings, we have broken each of these 2 sessions into 2 sections. This is Part 1A in a series that also contains 1B, 2A, and 2B. While we will not be looking at all of the sample release items today, we will be taking an in-depth look at some of them. Please refer to the realigned sample release items on our Assessment Quick Links webpage. New sample items will be released in fall 2025. Because it is important to include the standards in our work, we will begin with AOR 3.1 and discuss gaps from the 2015 standards to the 2024 standards. This work targets 8th grade ELA, English 1, and English 2. Teachers of grades 6 and 7 will also benefit from our work with the 6th grade literary item. Now let's look at bridging the gap for AOR 3.1 and working backward from an English 2 literary item. Because there are language shifts in the new standards, there may be language that this year's students will know in the next few years of instruction, but won't know them now because they did not receive instruction through the new standards prior to this school year. Teachers should be aware of this so you can go back and add that language or skill to your current instruction as a way to build into your grade level indicators. The assessment specifications document will help you do this. Here you see a sample from the English 2 assessment specifications document. The vocabulary in blue indicates language that is new to the teacher in English 2. The language in red indicates language that is new to both the teacher and the student in English 2. Let's look at situational and dramatic irony. This is new to the language of the English 2 indicators in the new standards. Because it is in blue, it is in earlier grades in the new standards and was not in the old standards. Since this is year 1 of the standards, this year's English 2 students did not receive instruction on situational and dramatic irony in English 1, which means the English 2 teacher will have to introduce situational, dramatic, and verbal irony this year. Beginning next year, English 2 students should enter English 2 with a working knowledge of situational and dramatic irony. The assessment specifications document also tells teachers exactly what students should know and be able to do to meet the cognitive level of the grade level indicators. Notice that nowhere on here does it say that by the end of English 2, students should be able to identify the 3 types of irony. While that is where instruction may begin, the expectation on the end of course exam is that students understand how perspective impacts the different types of irony. This helps teachers when they are developing their classroom assessments. Here is a stair-step version of AOR 3.1 for grades 8 through English 2. Next, we will break down each grade level indicator and discuss what teachers at each grade should be doing this year to bridge the gap for AOR 3.1. This is the same indicator at the 8th grade level. While the full indicator is at the top of the slide, I would like to note that we, summative assessment, cannot assess the full indicator with one test item on SC Ready. At the bottom of the screen, you will see how we can assess the 4 different parts of AOR 3.1. You will also notice narrator's choice of and a difference in within parentheses. This has been added to this slide to help teachers differentiate between the updates in the 2024 standards. In the old standards, point of view and perspective were used interchangeably. The new standards specify that point of view is author's choice. Does the author decide to tell the story through a third-person narrator or a first-person narrator? Let's look at the same indicator in English 1. Although we do not assess English 1 at the state level, it is important that English 2 teachers review the English 1 indicators to fill in any instructional gaps. It is also important for the English 1 teacher to fill in any instructional gaps from 8th grade. This year, English 2 teachers will also have to refer to the 8th grade indicator because of the gap in usage of the terms point of view and perspective from the old standards to the new standards. At the top of the slide, you see the full indicator. Then you see how we assess the indicator in parts. It is important to remember that classroom instruction and assessment does not have to break down the indicator in parts. Summative assessment is more limited than classroom instruction and classroom assessment. What is in blue on this slide is new to English 1. So if English 1 teachers this year teach to the full intent of AOR 3.1, students in English 2 next year will be prepared. This year, English 2 teachers will need to address the English 2 indicator after addressing what is in blue in the English 1 indicator and in the 8th grade indicator. At the top of the slide, you see the full English 2 indicator. Bulleted in white, you see the English 1 skills that will have to be added to English 2 instruction this year. Bulleted in blue, you see what is in the English 2 indicator. However, this year's instruction will require English 2 to cover what is in blue and in white. So let's look at this in a different way. 8th grade teachers. Here you see in red that dramatic irony is new to the language of 8th grade. This is new for the teacher and the student. Notice suspense is underlined. That is because it was in the 8th grade RL 11.1 indicator, so it is not new to the 8th grade teacher, only to the 8th grade student. This year, 8th grade teachers will introduce both suspense and dramatic irony. English 1 teachers. Here you see humor in orange. In RL 11.1, students were introduced to humor. This year's English 1 students should be familiar with humor when they enter English 1. Next year's English 1 students will not be, because humor is no longer introduced in the 8th grade indicators. In blue, you notice the word suspense. Suspense will be new to the English 1 teacher, but not to the English 1 student, because it was taught through RL 11.1 and is in the current 8th grade AOR 3.1. In red, you notice situational irony. This is new to the English 1 teacher and the students. English 1 teachers should also notice dramatic irony in red for 8th grade. In the 2024-25 school year, English 1 teachers will need to add dramatic irony to their instruction because this year's English 1 students have not been introduced to it before. English 2 teachers. Notice suspense and humor are in blue. Your students should be familiar with suspense and humor because they were introduced in RL 11.1. Notice that situational irony is in orange. Situational irony was not in the 2015 ELA standards, so it is new for English 2 teachers and new for the English 2 students in the 2024-25 school year. Next year, English 2 students should enter English 2 familiar with these terms if the English 1 teacher introduced them. New to English 2 teachers and English 2 students in the 2024 ELA standards are sarcasm and verbal irony. So now let's look at a sample item from the English 2 sampler located on our Assessment Quick Links for Teachers webpage. This question is asking about a character's perspective, which is part of AOR 3.1. However, this item was originally written for the 2015 standards. Does it still align to the 2024 standards? No, it does not align, and this is indicated in the sample release item document on our webpage. But let's look at why it doesn't align to English 2 AOR 3.1 and what could be asked to make it align. AOR 3.1 in English 2 is quite different from the 2015 indicator. The new English 2 indicator outlines that by the end of the grade level, students should be able to analyze how an author creates effects such as suspense, humor, or sarcasm through the differences in perspectives of the character and the reader. The old question asks why the author includes a character's perspective. The question does not address that the reader and a character may have different perspectives and how that difference can create effects such as dramatic irony. This is why the old item does not align to the 2024 standards. It is extremely important to note that the text for this sample item does not contain effects such as suspense or dramatic irony. Therefore, the aligned questions I am about to share do not fit within the sample text. Do not give these questions to students with this sample text. There is no answer to be found within this text. One way to target AOR 3.1 is to ask what effect is created by the difference in perspectives. To answer this question correctly, the student must have a working knowledge of the effects listed in the previous slide. If the student does not understand each of those effects, the student will not be able to locate the effects within a text. To answer this question correctly, the student must understand perspective and that what a character sees, hears, witnesses, or knows may not be the same as what the reader sees, hears, witnesses, or knows. There are many factors that can affect the differences in perspectives, including the author's choice of narrative point of view. Another way to target AOR 3.1 is to ask how the author creates the effect. This can be in a section of text or the whole text. To answer this item correctly, the student must have a working knowledge of dramatic irony and how an author creates dramatic irony. The The student must also be able to determine the different perspectives of at least one character in the story and the reader. Another example is to ask why the author creates an effect in the passage. To answer this item correctly, the student must have a working knowledge of dramatic irony and how an author creates dramatic irony. The student must be able to determine the different perspectives of at least one character in the story and the reader. The student must be able to connect the author's choice to create dramatic irony with the author's purpose in this section of the text. The student may need to consider, what is the author trying to illustrate through the use of dramatic irony? What message is the author trying to send? Is the author trying to foreshadow an event later in the text? Is the author trying to draw the reader's attention to something in the text? To be successful with a question such as this one, the student has to consider the author's purpose in creating this effect. It is very rare that an author would create an effect, such as dramatic irony, without a reason or purpose for doing so. English 2 students should be able to make connections between the element or elements and the author's purpose for including the element or elements. One example of this comes from Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. One example of dramatic irony in Romeo and Juliet is when Juliet drinks the potion that makes her seem to be dead. We, the audience, know that she is not dead, but in a deep sleep. When Romeo finds her, he does not know that she is in a deep sleep, and he believes she is dead. Why does Shakespeare give us, the reader, a different perspective than he gives Romeo? What is the purpose of this in the play? How does this difference in perspectives impact the characters? This is just one example of how an author purposefully creates the effect of dramatic irony. Now let's jump to a 6th grade item. Teachers in grades 7 through English 2, this also benefits you because we are first going to look at the vertical articulation of AOR 1.2. AOR 1.2 focuses on figurative language. In the 2015 standards, indicator RL 9.1 focused on figurative language. The articulation of RL 9.1 is shown here. There are some significant shifts in AOR 1.2 for grades 6 through English 2. These shifts directly affect instruction. Notice that the first part of RL 9.1 does not change across 5 grade levels. This means that all students in grades 6 through English 2 were determining figurative and connotative meanings in increasingly complex text. Let's look at the second part of RL 9.1 because there are some significant shifts in some grade levels. This is the section of AOR 1.2 that changes the most in the new standards. In orange, you see language and skills that remain the same in each of the grade levels. What you should also see is that 7th grade is an outlier to the other grades. In the old standards, 7th grade teachers were teaching something totally different than in 6th grade, and the students never returned to it in subsequent years. In green, you see specific language that entered in 8th grade but was not added to or built upon until later grades. Parts of RL 9.1 for 6th grade align with parts of AOR 1.2 and AOR 8.1. In blue, you see the language that is shared from the 2015 standards to the 2024 standards. The difference between the indicators is shown in purple. Why is this important for 6th grade teachers? Explaining how figurative language impacts texts is new for grades 6 through English 2. This is a side-by-side of the 7th grade indicators. Remember, the second part of RL 9.1 in 7th grade was very different from all the other grades. Again, what is in blue is what carried over to the 2024 standards. What you see in purple is what has changed. The entire section of Part 2 of RL 9.1 is not included in the 7th grade indicator of AOR 1.2 or AOR 8.1. We also see that the entire indicator of AOR 1.2 is new to 7th grade teachers. So why is this important? First, the entire section of RL 9.1 most closely aligns with the expectations of AOR 5.1. The entire AOR 1.2 indicator is brand new to 7th grade teachers. This means new instruction around figurative language and how it impacts mood, tone, and meaning. Refer to the assessment specifications document to determine which types of figurative language should remain part of 7th grade ELA instruction and may be assessed on SC Ready. Moving to 8th grade. Again, what is in blue has crossed over from the old standards to the new. And what is in purple on the left side of your screen is no longer part of 8th grade instruction, and what is in purple on the right side is new to 8th grade instruction. Why is this important for 8th grade teachers? The term illusion has been moved out of 8th grade and into English 1 in the new standards. The term analogy aligns closer to AOR 8.1b, relationship between words. Because the word analogy has been dropped from the language of the standards, it will not be directly assessed on SC Ready, but can still be part of instruction. 8th grade teachers will be working with how figurative language impacts mood. This is new for 8th grade teachers. Analyze how is new language for grades 6 through English 2. Refer to the assessment specifications document to determine which specific types of figurative language should still be a part of 8th grade ELA instruction and may appear on the SC Ready test. Even though we do not assess English 1 at the state level, it is important to look at English 1 because it supports English 2. What is in blue crossed over from the old standards to the new standards. Here we only see purple on the right side. This tells us that nothing left English 1 instruction, but things have been added to English 1 instruction. Why is this important for English 1 teachers? English 1 teachers will directly teach illusion for the first time. English 1 teachers will directly teach how figurative language impacts mood for the first time. How figurative language impacts other aspects of text is new to grades 6 through English 2. Refer to the 8th grade assessment specifications document to see the specific types of figurative language that should still be a part of instruction and will be assessed on the EOCEP for English 2. Now let's look at English 2. Again, what's in blue crosses over, and what you see in purple has been added to English 2 instruction. Why is this important for English 2 teachers? AOR 1.2 becomes broader in English 2. Mood, tone, and meaning should still be part of the instructional language. Allegory is being added to allusion from English 1. Both terms should still be part of the instructional language of English 2. Refer to the assessment specifications document to see what other specific types of figurative language may be used on the EOCEP. Let's look at a sample 6th grade item that was realigned to AOR 1.2. The question is in bold. How does the figurative language in the sentence impact the meaning? The correct answer is in blue. The figurative language creates an image of the students as orderly. What does a student need to be able to do to answer this question correctly? To answer this question successfully, students must go through a cognitive process. The student must know various types of figurative language and their meanings. The student must recognize this example as a simile. The student must understand how a simile functions. The student must read the text carefully and consider the context of ducklings trailing their mother, trekked quietly, and holding on tightly to the rope. The student must make inferences from the context to connect the image of ducks following their mother to the students quietly following their teacher while holding on to a rope. We all know that reading items on SC Ready and the end of course exam for English 2 are text-based. This includes vocabulary items. So take a moment to consider which of these two options would be of most benefit to students. Is it more helpful to continue asking students to find similes in different sentences or texts? Or is it more helpful to support students in the analysis of different types of figurative language within a text or texts? If you chose option B, you are correct. If you use this sample item with your students to only focus on simile, and other types of language are assessed on SC Ready or the end of course exam this year, how might that impact students? One thing to remember about summative assessment is that we are limited in how we can ask questions. Because we use a lot of selected response items, we can only assess one piece of an indicator with one question. This is why instruction must focus on the full indicator and not just on one section. Thank you for watching Part 1A of this recording.